There, I'm Anne, and I'm the default cook in my house, as well as a couple corners of the internet. And today we are going to cut up some chicken breast. We're going to freeze it and have it ready for when our family needs to use it because it was on a really good sale this week. And it's important to be able to take advantage of those sales if you're watching your food grocery, if I could speak, if you're watching your grocery budget. And these days, who isn't? So we have one pack of chicken here that I opened yesterday, and yours are probably going to be a little more pre-trimmed than this. When my grocery store runs this sale, they have a hard time keeping up with demand. And so we're missing one off this because I used it yesterday when I got these. But you can see this is 2 chicken breasts that are still connected. So this is one whole chicken. The breasts of one whole chicken. Food safety wise, you can see I just got these out of the fridge, and that's what we want to do. We don't want to have these out longer than we need them to. And equipment wise, before we get started, we want to make sure we have everything we're going to need handy for us. So food safety wise, one of the biggest things we're going to need that you're not going to see here on camera is sink, antibacterial soap, water. When we're messing with raw chicken, wash your hands. I also have a plate here, and that's going to be for like scraps, like these big chunks of fun stuff that we're going to cut off. I don't want to eat that, so it's going to go on a plate. You can use a bowl for scraps. A plate takes up a little less space in my dishwasher, so that's why I use that. We're also going to need some paper towels to dry the chicken off, freezer bags to freeze it. I have gallon and quart at the ready. And then I like to have some parchment paper in case I end up with layers in that same bag, because we want to be able to separate them easily so that they can defrost well, especially if we only need part of the bag. That's going to be really important. And you could use wax paper for that. I prefer parchment paper because if it sticks to something, if a little bit sticks to things and it ends up going in your oven or a dish, parchment paper is made to withstand those temperatures and wax paper is not. So if you have both in your kitchen, definitely I would reach for the parchment. We're not using any special equipment today. We're going to cut things up into diced chicken and stir-fry strips and whole chicken breast if we want to grill it or put it in our crock pot for shredded chicken later. I am not going to be grinding any chicken. You can grind chicken breast if that's a piece of equipment that you have. You can see the KitchenAid behind me, but I do not have that particular attachment. And yeah, so we're not going to be doing that. That is an option for you if you have the tools to do so. And we'll just kind of start cutting. The way we're going to do this is first by trimming. You can optionally pat dry with the paper towels first, but I don't need to pat that dry, so I prefer to trim first because I find I use just a little fewer paper towels, a few fewer. I don't know. I'm an engineer. Words are hard. Grammar is not my expertise. And as you cut things off, like this was a little nib on this piece of chicken. And so that's one of the reasons I like doing this in bulk. One, taking advantage of that price. And two, this, if I was just trying to trim one breast by itself, this might go to waste because what am I going to do with one little chicken nub? But if I'm prepping a couple of different things, well, now this can go into a stir fry or casserole bag, even if the rest of the breast is doing something different. So we'll just go in here. Can you see? Let me move these a little bit for you. Let me throw this one away. You also want to make sure that you are using a rather sharp knife if you can. It allows you just to make cleaner cuts and cut easier and safer, because you're less likely to force force and use pressure and have your knife slip. That's the reason that it's safer to use a sharp knife. So in addition to any like big chunks of skin, we're also going to look for any cartilage in this section right here. So any gristle or cartilage on there, we're going to want to trim away. That one is trimmed. And I'm realizing with this much chicken that I probably should have gotten a bigger cutting board. This is the largest one that nicely fits in my dishwasher. The other ones end up too tall and they're okay. Some of them are okay if they like lean over, but if the dishwasher's full and they don't have the space to lean because there's dishes right next to them, then they don't. And then I have to hand wash it. And I don't like hand washing cutting boards like this that had chicken on them. Not a fan. So again, I was able to save a little nub out of there that will go in a bag for stir fries or casseroles. And I suppose while I'm doing this, we could talk about the different ways to cut your chicken breast. A whole breast like this is going to be great for grilling, for baking whole, or for putting in your slow cooker instant pot, something where you're going to cook the whole breast and shred it anyway, or you're looking for a particularly large portion. The other option that we have is to butterfly it. And for that, we're going to put that smooth side down. And you can either go this way or this way. I usually go this direction. And I'm going to start from the smaller side. I'm actually going to temporarily relocate those to give myself a little more space to use the knife safely because we want our knife away from us. So this is still a little bit connected and I could have it more connected than that, could have left it more connected than this. I'm going to go ahead and disconnect it entirely. And now we have a thinner breast that's going to thaw quicker and cook quicker. And you know how your family is going to eat things best. This is still a rather large piece, so that's probably going to be like me and my daughter's piece because she eats more chicken if it was on my plate first. And this will probably be Dad's. And so this chicken breast is ready. Again, we could have left that whole. We decided to butterfly it. We could also go further here. You can, when you're cutting into the other shapes, you can either cut them from the whole breast or you can slice from here. So let me show you the different ways. Again, we've got some gristle and cartilage right in here in that corner where it was attaching to the bone. We take that out and then we can do, if we're gonna do like fajitas, I like to do nice long strips. And so instead of cutting just strip, like stir fried like this, we can cut on the diagonal a little bit. And that's gonna give us some nice long stir fry strips. And we could use those in stir fries or we can use them in fajitas. And you can freeze this by itself, or you can do like a meal kit in a bag type deal where if you also bought peppers, say, you could put, you know, onions. Oh, you can't see those, they're in the bag, but I have onions back there. Onions and peppers and chicken all in the same bag and it's ready to go. I tend to freeze the components separately just because it gives you a little bit more flexibility. And if these are too thick for you, like it's not thick this way, but if this is too wide, you can just go ahead and cut it like that. And the other way to do that is butterflying first and then slicing those butterflied pieces. I'm gonna go back and do a couple of these got a little wide. And when we get to the end, we can either keep doing that or we can turn this on the side. Found a little extra piece to trim, and then cut there. For cutting, we want to keep our fingers back. Gloved or not, we don't want cuts. So we're going to take those fingers and keep them behind our knuckles. And go at a pace you're comfortable with. This is not chopped. Please don't chop your hand. There's no timer. I understand that there might be a certain amount of time you have to get things done, but go slow with a knife. All right, so we've got these ones now cut into kind of fajita strips. I do try and keep one hand knife only and clean so that I can grab things from the bag. And before we do that, we're gonna grab a paper towel and pat this dry. A little more. The less moisture that we have going in, the less likely we are to get freezer burn. The other thing that's going to help us with that is when we put it in the bag, we are going to remove as much air as we can. Some moisture will come out of the chicken when it's freezing and thawing. That happens through that process. And these 3 bits are casserole small bits, so keep those separate. And we've got chicken for that meal. And this one is going to be casserole. Oop. Again, just going through and kind of getting off any grimy bits that we don't want to eat. And in particular, that cartilage. And you could save this in a separate bag for making chicken stock or chicken broth. Since these are boneless breasts, we don't really have enough to make broth with just this. But if you were getting those same pieces off of a whole chicken, or you also had, enough stuff in the freezer from before, or you'd gotten a rotisserie chicken and still have the carcass, you could add that to that. So we're moving on to doing pieces. And we're just doing bite-sized pieces, whatever that means to you. So I'm cutting the strips a little bit thicker, but then each strip into a couple of bites, depending on where it is. The thicker section is going to be more like 4 bites, maybe 5. The smaller end caps are going to be, 2 or 3 bites. But I would say this is probably between 1/2 inch and 1 inch, closer to 1 inch of little bite-sized cubes. And these are going to be so flexible. You can use them in stir fries. You can also use the strips in stir fries, but you can use these in stir fries or like teriyaki chicken. You can use them in almost any casserole dish is going to call for kind of diced chicken. So these are just really handy and flexible that way. I might need to make my chicken bacon. Actually, I need to develop the chicken bacon ranch casserole. I've made it and it was good, but it wasn't quite there. It wasn't quite ready for the world. But my chicken potato broccoli casserole, might need to make that one with this. Got a little cartilage in there. And then I'm going to take those 3 little bits from the other chicken breasts, and that'll go right in this pile of chicken and with that dish. So from those 3 breasts, we now have 3 meals, depending on how much chicken you need for a meal for your family. That's something that you're gonna know the best. We're not huge eaters because my kids are still elementary school and they don't have adult appetites at this point, and also want, you know, pretty heavy on their sides of like mac and cheese and things. But if you need more chicken, if you have a bigger family, if you have teenagers, make these in portions and freeze them in portions that work for you. If you need to fill this bag up more, do so. I'm going to pause for just a moment while I wash my hands, and I'll be back. All right, clean hands, which I'm going to get dirty here in a minute, but I needed to do a couple of things with clean hands in the meantime. One, I'm going to put this back in the fridge because we did go over all 4 types. I didn't think we would be able to do that with one bag. So I'm going to put this back and I'll do that off camera. What I am going to do is show you how we're going to label things. So we're going to get out a Sharpie. Little trick. I keep one in the drawer that I keep Ziploc bags in so that it's right there. So this one we already filled. I do prefer to write on them before, but you don't know how much they're going to weigh before, and that's something you can do. If you have a kitchen scale, you can weigh them just to see how much chicken you have in each bag. So we're going to label these raw chicken breast, fajita strips. Once these are frozen, it's really hard to tell, in particular between different types of cut up chicken. So between the strips and the diced, they look basically the same in a bag. If it's a whole chicken breast, you're probably able to tell a little bit better what shape it is. But I think it's good practice just to write down what the material, what you're freezing, in this case raw chicken breast, and the style that you've cut it into, and most importantly, the date. And that's so that we can FIFO. And if you've ever worked in a restaurant, you know first in, first out. And if you haven't, well, FIFO. That's what it means. First in, first out. And if we don't date anything, then we don't know when it went in. And I'm going to show you my little freezing method. So there are 2. The easiest way is just right on the counter, laying everything down and pushing the air out. I've already zipped this 3/4 of the way, and I just push, try and get as much air out as possible, and zip that top. This is pretty darn good. This gets the vast majority of the air out, and air is what causes freezer burn. Air and moisture, that combination is what ruins our meat, or texture-wise ruins our meat. It's still safe to eat freezer burned, it's just doesn't taste as good. We're having this flat, and I'm going to freeze it flat until it's frozen. Once it's frozen, then we can stack it up like this. But if we stack it up like this first, as it freezes, gravity is going to do its job, and we're going to end up with that. And it'll be thicker toward down here, and it won't stack up as neatly. Also, I'm sorry, that was probably really loud. So I want it flat like this, freeze it flat, and then we can transfer it upright after it's frozen all the way. I don't think I'm actually going to need the parchment. You know what? We'll use the parchment. We're going to go ahead and use it. So there's 2 ways I could do this with this butterfly chicken breast, or it's cutlets now because I cut it all the way open. I could use a gallon bag and then it would just fit all nicely and we'd do like this and get as much air out that way. Or I can make them fit in this and use some parchment paper to separate the 2 pieces. And for that, I want to make sure my parchment paper piece fits in here. And I believe you can buy squares, parchment squares, pre-done, but I just get the big roll at Costco. Right or wrong? Now my hands are gonna get dirty again. I do try not to touch the top of the bag, but I'm also not reusing these. And you can put these in blank, which is what I'm calling it now, or you can put them in seasoned. So if you want dinner time to be super fast and easy, you can season the chicken, this chicken before it goes in. And then really all you gotta do is defrost it and bake. And for defrosting, when we get to that point, we wanna do that one of two ways. We wanna do that in the refrigerator, like overnight, which is gonna be our best way to defrost. Or we can use a water bath. However, you wanna use cold water, like ice cold water, and you wanna change that out every half an hour. Or, here's my favorite little trick, or you take a bowl of water that is big enough to hold your chicken as well, and you make a bowl that water bath and you put that bowl in the fridge. And then you're still getting the faster heat transfer of water because water conducts heat much better than air does. That's why Rose was fine on the Titanic and Jack was not, because he was in the water. Water sucks out that heat, defrosts a lot faster. And if it's in the fridge, it's not gonna get warm. It's gonna be in the fridge. It's there with frozen chicken. Just make sure that you're starting with cold water. As long as you start with cold water, if that water is in the fridge, you can thaw it that way, and that's still gonna thaw much faster than just putting this bag in the fridge. I've used that tip personally quite a bit because a lot of times things, even if I pull them out like the morning of or the night before, sometimes they're not all the way defrosted. And that just takes it to the end. So I'm gonna wait until my hands are clean to push all the air out of that. But you can see what we did here. We've got our parchment paper between the two pieces so that they don't stick together, and we're able to get those out easier. And since this is my dirty chicken hand this time, I'll use this one to open this bag. So we've got our diced chicken breast, our fajita strips, our butterflied cutlets that could have been butterflied, but we turned them all the way to cutlets. And we are ready to push the air out of these and then freeze them. Another pause to wash your hands. Alrighty, clean hands. I don't think this parchment paper got dirty, but I am going to set it to the side and reserve it for that other chicken bag specifically. So again, for getting air out, we're gonna press down and get a fair amount of the air out, and then go across 3/4. And we're just doing this with our hands on the counter. The other way you can do this is the way I do it for sous vide, and that is to use a water bath. In that case, we would do most of this and then put it in water, and then you can really see all the pockets of air and push out as much air as possible. So that gets you a little more out. If you have a vacuum sealer, you can also use a vacuum sealer. But if you're gonna use these within a couple of months, honestly, this method is good enough. And vacuum seal bags cost a little more than these. So it's ideal freezing to be able to put each on a flat surface. You could use a tray to do that if you wanted. I know I already have other frozen chicken in there. Is that closed all the way? Okay, squeeze, air out, and close. I have some other frozen meat in there that I can just set this nicely on top of until it freezes, and then we'll be able to stack these up. If things are a little off and uneven because, you know, like this is a whole shape, so we're not going to get chicken up here. These are pretty spread out and pretty even. But if you have multiple of these, you just stack them every other like this to make the pile as even as possible while it freezes. And we're done with those. The last thing we want to talk about before we go here is cleaning up. So raw chicken all over. And we want to make sure while we're doing this that we don't have other food right around. So I wouldn't want like something that I'm going to eat raw here, like a veggie tray or something that we're going to eat raw. We don't want that right next to the chicken. We also don't want to, this might be controversial, we don't want to wash the chicken because that spreads salmonella and germs all over the place and makes them more airborne because they go just with the water that they're rinsing off, that they're being rinsed with. So we want to make sure that our area is kind of dedicated to what we're doing at the time. And then afterwards, we want to disinfect. So this was just a couple of chicken breasts. It's not a huge ordeal. So I'm just going to disinfect this island after. Obviously, wash the cutting board, wash the knife, hot soapy water for both those things, or the dishwasher for the cutting board. The knife is not dishwasher safe. If yours is, great. Mine that is a hand wash knife. But so we're going to use some spray. I'm going to use like a disinfecting spray. You can use your preferred kind. I personally in my house have Clorox. I have Force of Nature. I like all of them for different things. For raw chicken, I do like to use a little bit of something with bleach, but that's because the only place that raw chicken really happens in my house is on this island. And then right by the stove there. So it's up to you. Use what you're comfortable with to clean your kitchen. Another option that you can do, and I would still wipe down well after, is to saran wrap. And I've seen that done. That happens more when you're going to do a lot because it's a bit of an intensive step to saran wrap your island or your workspace to make it so that you have that all kind of contained, and then you can wrap up that saran wrap at the end, toss it, and give the counter is a lot less messy to wipe down. But honestly, this isn't that messy. Most of the mess stayed on the cutting board. Oh, I did forget to mention when I talked about the cutting board, I just said have one with these ridges to keep any chicken juices from flowing off onto your counter is helpful. So if you have a choice between multiple cutting boards, one with like that little divot around the perimeter of the board is helpful for that. And I think that's everything. So if you want to drop in the comments what cut shape you prefer and what you are most likely to use the most often, because that's the kind you should do the most of, right? Depending on what your family eats is how you are going to prep most of your chicken. As I'm cleaning up here, I realized that we didn't talk about how long to keep that chicken in your freezer. Up to about 6 months is generally good. You can get a little bit longer on the whole just trimmed breasts. And that's why it's important to first in, first out, date everything and go through it periodically to make sure that you don't have things getting lost in the way back of your freezer. Not that I've done that. Definitely have done that. Oh, also everything's fine, but I don't like wearing my ring when I mess with raw chicken because I don't want chicken juices in my jewelry. So keep it clean, keep it healthy, and I know you will because you're amazing and you're doing a great job.